Overall, the Xbox Series S has received positive coverage. However, some developers have criticized Microsoft's choice to make two different consoles at launch. Today I want to focus on the latest criticism and explore if there's any validity to it. But first, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. We are the XoneBros. We are your positive gaming and Xbox community. We've got videos dropping every day, and we've got a podcast dropping each and every single week. Head over to iTunes, Spotify, search for us, XoneBros. There, listen to us every week, and join us live. We record it on this channel every single Friday. Make sure you hit the notification button and be informed when we do go live. Okay, so WCCFtech.com recently interviewed David Cage, the founder and CEO of Quantic Dream Studios. These are the developers who developed games like Detroit Become Human, Beyond Two Souls, and Heavy Rain. And here's what he had to say. He said, quote, "Many developers prefer consoles to PC because on consoles you only have to deal with one hardware, whereas on PC there are so many different configurations, graphic cards, drivers, controllers, etc. that makes the development much more complex." He goes on to say, when a manufacturer offers two consoles with different specs, there's a strong chance that most developers will focus on the lower end version to avoid doing two different versions. He says, "I must confess that I'm really not a big fan of this situation. I think it's confusing for developers, but also for players, and although I can understand the commercial reasons behind this choice, I think the situation is questionable." Okay, so let's break this down. First off, he says that many developers prefer consoles to PC because you only have to deal with one set of hardware, whereas on PC, you have to take into account countless configurations, which makes development more complex. This obviously is true. Anytime you have to develop to one set of specs, it's naturally going to be easier, or at least, at the very least, if not easier, maybe easier is the wrong word, it's going to be more focused. Right? Wait, I don't have a problem with that part of the statement. I think he's 100% correct. I don't think anyone's going to argue with that. He then goes on to say, essentially, that the Series S and X presents this situation to console developers, which I think is sort of true, but I think he's overstating it here. You're not dealing with separate pieces of hardware like you are in PC, or countless configurations. What you're dealing with is one additional piece of hardware that utilizes the same architect and CPU as the Series X. You've got the Series S. It's not that different, nor do I think it's that big of a difference that's going to create developers to have issues with it, right? Clearly that's not the case. So I think he overstates it right there. He also says that he feels that it is confusing for developers and also players. Now, I'm not a developer, so I can't speak to the developer side of things, but I don't think it's going to be confusing for them. However, as a player, I don't find it confusing at all. One system can play games at 4K, one can't. One plays them at 1440. Everything else is the same. That's the difference right now. While I think it can be a little bit confusing for first-time console buyers, I do think he overstates the confusion here once again. He also states here that he believes that most developers will focus on the lower-end version to avoid doing two different versions. And here is where I think his argument starts to go off the rails a little bit, and I also think he exposes himself as just not a fan of Xbox. Let me show you why. Immediately following his criticism of Xbox having two different consoles and saying that he thinks that developers are going to focus on the lower end version at launch, he addresses what Quantic Dream is focusing on. He says, quote, "Regarding Quantic Dream, as we develop our own technology and engines, we are determined to optimize our titles for each platform. Being now a PC developer, we are implementing scalable features based on the platform." One more time. We are implementing scalable features based on the platform, which is very helpful to highlight what the hardware has best to offer. Do you see what happened there? Do you see what he did there? I think this exposes Mr. Cage as essentially just being a fan of PlayStation. I think this statement invalidates his previous statement regarding his concerns with regard to Xbox and two different consoles. He says that he believes most developers will develop games for the lower console to avoid doing two different versions, yet goes on to say that his very own company is developing games with, quote, "scalable features based on the platform." And this, to me, is where most game developers are at, especially developers who are already working on PC games. Games are scalable. Features in games are scalable. Games have features that perform differently according to the hardware that you have in your system. Now, I do think the Series S is a smart move by Microsoft, and David Cage thinks that too. He says he thinks it's a commercial success. He just thinks it's a mistake on the developer side, which makes no sense to me because his own studio is developing games scalable based on the hardware as a PC developer, right? I think where the Series S is going to have success is with families and parents who are purchasing consoles for their kids. I think it's a nice entry price. I think it's a smart move. and I do not think developers will struggle with it as David Cage suggests. I think he's definitely overstating the point here. Remember, his studio has basically been a PlayStation console exclusive developer, and so he comes into this with a clear bias already. Not that there isn't any truth to what he's saying. There obviously is truth when, you're developing for PC and there's complications because of the numerous configurations that can exist. But I think he's overstating the argument when it comes to the Series X and Series S. And what I found with a lot of these statements when you read in and dive deep is they are from developers like this. Developers who have almost exclusively developed for PlayStation. And so there's a clear bent and bias there. I think he's overstated, and it's not something that's going to prevent developers from creating the best games for the Series X, as he does suggest. But what do you think? I want to know, do you think he's right? Am I wrong? Let me know in the comments below. Again, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. We're the XoneBros. This is your positive gaming and Xbox community. Don't forget, we record our podcast live each and every single Friday right here, so hit that notification bell and be notified when we do indeed go live.